Boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to my podcast, Coffees on Me, David Quan, where I strive to give guests legacy-worthy interviews that listeners can enjoy while cooking, commuting, relaxing, or walking their pets. When I started this passion project podcast at a low point of my time in Cambridge, I was genuinely motivated by three founding ideals. Number one, purpose of giving. Number two, learning from others. And number three, sharing of stories, which are aspirations that still make up the content descriptions for every single episode. Admittedly, because of how much we grow every day, often evolving, if not completely changing our views with further life experiences, I often listen back to these long-form, unstructured conversations to laugh at just how naive I was and am. But what gives me the enthusiasm and courage to host and share is a hopeful aspiration that this passion project, if wholly true to those founding motivations about giving, learning, and sharing, can be a worthwhile pursuit. Within our increasingly complex and polarized world, I genuinely believe that these rare, open, and nuanced dialogues can contribute towards the service-oriented ideals of developing empathy, forging relationships, and building communities. Just before we dive into today's conversation, I'd like to invite our listeners to join the community of 20,000 plus at coffeesonmedavidquan.com, where we kindly share legacy-worthy life study career interviews, systems, and resources flourishing our hero's journey. You can receive my gift repository and newsletter now 100% free, all to pay forward my blessings. With over 100 legacy-worthy interviews and 100,000 plus downloads, this community is about giving, learning, and sharing together. I'm absolutely thrilled to be speaking today from Peterhouse College, Cambridge, continuing what has been an extraordinary period of conversations about the future of Cambridge University and higher education globally. Following my recent interview with Cambridge Chancellor candidate Dr. Mohammed Al-Arian and my Cambridge Union election special series featuring presidential candidates Chris Lord and Jack Peters and Speaker's Officer candidate Freddie Bishop, today's conversation represents another crucial dimension of this critical moment for academic institutions worldwide. Today, I anticipate that we'll be exploring crucial questions facing higher education, including how rigorous academic scholarship connects with and serves broader society. These questions became urgently relevant in November 2024 when our guest Ali Louks' PhD research thesis, Olfactory Ethics, the Politics of Smell in Modern and Contemporary Prose, unexpectedly went viral, achieving over 120 million views and 20,000 plus reposts, which I think is one of the most viewed dissertation covers of all time, demonstrating both the immense potential and vulnerability of academic work in our digital age. Her experience navigating global attention while maintaining scholarly integrity, I think, illustrates the challenges and opportunities facing scholars who seek to make their research accessible to public audiences. What makes today's conversation in Cambridge particularly timely again is how it embodies Dr. Al-Arian's vision of Cambridge as a guardian of tradition and a catalyst of innovation. Our guest's journey from completing a PhD with no corrections, which is an impressive achievement, to becoming an influential public intellectual offers profound insights into how the next generation of academics can serve the broader mission that has driven Cambridge for over 800 years. Now to the official biography and introduction of Dr. Ali Louks. Dr. Ali Louks is a supervisor in English literature at the University of Cambridge, where she completed her PhD at Peterhouse College in 2024 with the rare distinction of passing her viva with no corrections. Her doctoral thesis, Olfactory Ethics, the Politics of Smell in Modern and Contemporary Prose, represents groundbreaking work in the interdisciplinary field of sensory studies, examining how literature registers the importance of olfactory discourse in structuring our social world through an intersectional analysis of gender, class, racial, and species power structures. Dr. Louks graduated with first-class honours in English literature from the University of Exeter in 2019 and earned her master's degree with distinction in issues in modern culture from University College London in 2020. Her journey into olfactory studies began during her undergraduate years with a project on the literary qualities of perfume marketing, evolving into her current expertise after experiencing COVID-related smell loss for 18 months. In November 2024, Dr. Louks became a global academic phenomenon when her celebratory PhD completion post garnered over 120 million views and 20,000 plus reposts, sparking international conversations about academic research, public engagement, and the value of humanities scholarship. Despite facing significant online harassment, including death and rape threats that promoted a police investigation, she responded with remarkable resilience and used the platform to educate audiences about her research. Her work has been featured across major outlets including NPR's It's Been a Minute with Brittany Luse and Yale philosopher Jason Stanley, CBC Radio's As It Happens, Rolling Stone, The Washington Post, The New Statesman, and The Conversation. And soon, Coffee's on me, David Quan. In February 2025, she signed with both British and American literary representation, leading to a book deal with Chatto and Windus for The Politics of Smell, scheduled for publication in spring 2027. Currently developing her postdoctoral project, Cultures of Olfactory Dysfunction, Dr. Louks continues to bridge rigorous academic scholarship with accessible public engagement, examining the emotional, cognitive, and social effects of olfactory impairment in our post-COVID world. Her work exemplifies the contemporary scholar-communicator model, demonstrating how specialized research can reveal important insights about social power structures while serving broader public understanding. Dr. Louks, I'm so happy to have you today, and we shared a delicious Xi'an meal and now have found ourselves at the end of the Peterhouse garden. But welcome to my podcast, Coffees on Me, David Quan.
Thank you so much for having me, David.
How are you feeling about the iced tea, the peach iced tea?
Oh, it's delicious. I'm a big fan of anything peach. It's, I think, probably my favourite fruit besides the cherry. But you don't often find cherry-flavoured tea, so peach will do.
Amazing. I know that you've often taught students throughout your time at Cambridge and you've used these supervision hubs in the garden. How does it feel now that we're recording our podcast in the outdoors?
In many ways, it feels a little like a Cambridge supervision, which are always one-on-one, almost always one-on-one, which is a unique facet of the Cambridge system. But it's very nice to be outside in the shade, otherwise my skin would be having problems right now as a sensitive person. And yes, I hope anyone watching can enjoy the beautiful background.
Absolutely. I'm very grateful that you've listened to a few episodes of my podcast, and I was just wondering, how do you understand my cliche of legacy worthy? What does it mean to you, and what do you want out of this recording?
Gosh, that's a really good question. I suppose, well, knowing you and knowing the way that you work, which is, deep, meaningful research, I think what I really want out of this conversation is just, an informed discussion about some of the things that are relevant to the past 6 months of my life, but also maybe a little bit about how I got here too. And I feel very safe in your hands. So.
Oh, thank you very much. So I've tried as much as I can, as you said, to do a lot of research, which basically means going through all of your social media posts and accounts and interviews and public content. And it did strike me of just how much thought and humility and just lots of good qualities that you use to engage with the public. And I've created an interview guide with 6 broad sections that we can touch on at different points in time.
Exciting.
So the first one, I've labelled it Roots and First Inspirations. The second section is Finding Your Niche, the academic journey. The third section is Olfactory Ethics, a deep dive into your research to the extent that we're able to discuss. The fourth one is PH Done, going viral and facing the backlash. The fifth one is Beyond the Ivory Tower, Identity and Your Public Engagement. and finally, future horizons and your lasting legacy. How do you feel about that?
I feel wonderful about that. Sounds great.
Amazing. So if we think back to the young Ali, you've often mentioned that you're one of those academic types who turn to books as a substitute for social interaction. And I know that you've listened to a lot of audiobooks, but what did a typical day for a 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old Ali look like at home?
Well, there was quite a significant difference between, I suppose, 7 and 9 or 10-year-old Ali. But I think what remained the same was I was constantly reading, whether it be physical books or audiobooks. You know, I grew up when you could still get audiobook tapes at Waterstones. And I remember the day when I ran out. I went to Waterstones and I had all of the tapes, and I thought, what am I going to do now? And it was, you know, not long after that they started bringing out CDs of audiobooks instead. So then I just moved over to those. I did a lot of painting growing up and drawing.
What kind of stuff did you paint? Nature, people, animals?
I typically didn't like to do people, but I loved landscapes and animals largely. I also had this little mushroom-shaped lamp on my bedside table, which had little mouse living in it. A little mouse on a little armchair. I don't know. And it was very intricate, and I think I found it kind of aspirational. And I became obsessed with drawing that over and over and over. I had completely forgotten about that until just now. But I think I'm really not that far away from that version of myself that wanted to be a little mouse in a mushroom house. And yeah, I think that's...
What did that mushroom house smell like?
Well, it was just an ordinary ceramic mushroom house. It wasn't made of an actual mushroom. That would be terrible. But yeah, I don't think it had any particular smell, but it certainly had a lot of little ceramic flowers growing up the side of it. So I suppose you could imagine the smell, to use that terrible internet meme.
Okay, and did you move around quite a bit during your childhood, or were you in one place?
I did move around a fair amount. I grew up in Norfolk and spent some time in the Midlands, a little bit in Leicester, and then came back to Norfolk after doing that little bit of travelling. And both sort of felt like home at the time. And yeah, Norfolk does still definitely feel like home, I think.
That's great. I think we share a commonality of audiobooks. When I was a young kid, I would listen to hours and hours of Chinese history audiobooks.
Oh, wow.
And I really just felt like I was a part of that time and that era. And you learn so much values from the stories, but also from the way that the reader of the audiobooks convey ideas through their language and narration. So was books and imagination almost like a refuge growing up then, where you could escape from reality and just go into different time periods and different settings?
Yes, definitely. I had a kind of turbulent childhood, and books were my refuge all the way through. And I think, you know, growing up, because I had this quite complicated family dynamic, and there was a lot going on in my life when I was a young person, I couldn't really find much commonality with my peers at the time. And so I would kind of turn to Jacqueline Wilson or to A Series of Unfortunate Events, which actually felt so much more real to me than...
Is that Lebanese Snicket?
Yeah.
I've actually, on my website, I have a photo with him as well.
Oh, lovely. Yeah, Daniel Handler's an amazing author, and I really respect him.
He's so funny.
He is so funny. He really is. And his work has such amazing literary content.
Wow.
The Series of Unfortunate Events is thoroughly inspired by canonical literature.
Wow. So, on the one hand, reality at the time would have perhaps seemed chaotic, unpredictable, and then this book environment, is also nuanced and, unpredictable. So I was wondering, as you were reading and listening to these books, in retrospect now as an adult who's done an English literature degree or multiple degrees, what touched you about those pieces of work? Like, did you learn from them? Did you find that there were things from the characters that you saw in yourself? Like, paint a more vivid picture of...
Yeah, I think both of those are true, actually. I think I'm going to talk about a series of unfortunate events, but that's fine. Honestly, when I was finishing up my PhD, I reread the whole series at bedtime, because it was, one of those periods where it's kind of academically intense period.
Was that foreshadowing? No, I'm kidding.
Well, yeah, maybe it bolstered me for what came next. But it was a good way to kind of turn my brain off, actually, at night. I really am an insomniac, and I struggle with sleeping a lot. The only place I ever...
thinking about the stories and how to write, or...
I think I'm just a typical thought daughter overthinker. I spend a lot of time rehashing things, thinking through things.
Rational thoughts or just random thoughts?
Both. I think maybe at nighttime you're at your most irrational, but also sometimes you're most creative.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But I think, I really related to children characters who had to grow up quickly. And were kind of forced to live with adult problems, and how they were able to navigate those complexities and learn about themselves, and actually try to maintain a sense of their own childishness, which I think is really important. I think as children we typically know what we like, and we have quite a strong sense of self most of the time, and we spend much of our adulthood trying to get back there, trying to work out what it is
finding
that fulfills
your inner
us.
child.
Yes, and it sounds kind of silly and woo-woo, but I really don't think it is. I think I had a very strong sense of self when I was young, and things were simple because I was doing the things that I loved, and I've tried to maintain as much of that as possible in my actual career by working on literature.
Absolutely. Who did you connect with the most then in terms of your readings and your kind of creative thoughts? Was there a teacher, or was there peers who you could engage with about?
I don't think I really connected with teachers until my A-levels, actually. I had some amazing teachers at A-level that really, really encouraged me and kind of saw something in me. Until then, I actually was homeschooled when I was young, because my mum was a teacher and my stepdad was a head teacher. And they were good at different things, and so they would kind of take it in turns. And I spent a couple of years...
Was it your choice to be homeschooled?
It was a kind of a holistic thing. I think, yes, it was. I didn't really enjoy the primary school that I was at. I found that I essentially was not learning much because I already knew the things that I was being taught because I read a lot. And so it felt like it was maybe stunting my development as a thinker, and it became possible to be homeschooled, and I learnt so much during those couple of years from my mum and my stepdad, and they really, really encouraged me to be my own motivation, to do what was fun and what I enjoyed, and they kind of created ways of doing that. My stepdad and I used to play this game with Smarties, where I'd have to do times tables or do kind of mental maths, and then he'd throw a Smartie up in the air and I'd catch it if I got it right, and I really can't do maths now because he died when I was quite young, and after that I just thought maths can go away now because there's no Smarties involved.
Wow, I guess that sounds like great creative teaching strategies.
Yeah.
But sounded more like hand-eye coordination than math.
Well, yeah, it was kind of a multi disciplinary kind of education. He also tried to teach me how to cartwheel, but I was really bad at that. So
logistically, how did homeschooling work? Because you mentioned that your mum and your stepdad are both educators themselves, so I'm assuming that they're at school during the week, and even after school, after that final lesson, we all know that educators don't actually finish. There's a lot of marking, meetings. So how did you get homeschooled when they're already at school?
So we largely, so you know how there's term time and school holidays? My school holidays would be my term time, mostly. And we'd also work on weekends. So, the nice thing about, both of those people was that they loved teaching and they loved me. Yeah. And so spending time together learning was kind of like our quality time.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like extra work for them, or at least I don't think so. Although they did tell me that the one thing that they asked of me was to never become a teacher myself. And of course, that's exactly what I went and did.
That's exactly. So then during Monday to Friday, during school hours, you were just home alone reading by yourself?
I would sometimes go with my mum to her school, and kind of do self-directed work.
Yeah.
But so I wasn't left alone very much.
Okay.
And I always had someone there with me, They weren't neglectful. I always had someone there with me. My the person that I refer to as my dad is not actually biologically related to me, but he is the closest person to me in my whole life.
That's the stepdad?
Not my stepdad. My stepdad died when I was 11. But my dad, his name is Steve. He is the most amazing person, my absolute rock. And he was my mum's boyfriend before I was born. And they broke up before I was born, but he drove my mum to the hospital. He was there when I was born, and he has been there literally every day of my life since.
Oh, wow.
So he's my best friend.
Oh.
And he was always there for me growing up as well.
Wow, that's beautiful. That's really beautiful. So at school then, you were obviously almost like a prodigy child where you've read a lot of books. How did your teachers and other people, your report card comments, what were the main adjectives or descriptions that?
Conscientious was the main one. I think I remember having lots of conscientious coming up.
It's pretty accurate.
Yeah, I've always kind of just had my head down. I've worked really hard.
Why did you work hard at that time?
I think I loved it, actually. Okay. I struggled with my mental health during my GCSEs, and I think I probably didn't do quite as well as I could have in my GCSEs. Not that it matters a pinch now, because I kind of lost that love for it, partly because I didn't get on with a lot of my teachers, and partly just because there are other things going on. But once I started my A-levels and I was able to hone in on the things that I really loved, which were primarily English and philosophy, and I still straddle those two fields now. I struggled really quite a lot to decide between the two of them, and then decided that actually I didn't really have to. I could do the philosophy part through the English, whereas I couldn't really do the English part through the philosophy as well. So that's how I made that decision. So yeah, for me it's simple because I love learning, and there are certain things that I'm not so good at, and I don't spend much time on them, like maths. But it's pretty simple for me that I just spend my time doing what I love, and that is the humanities and sometimes the social sciences. And now that I'm working on smell, I kind of want to have a really holistic overview of what that sense really is and what it means to people, and so the sciences come into that as well.
Steve sounds like an incredible man. Tell me more about him and his influence on you.
Oh my goodness, he is the person that has had the most influence on me. We are like two peas in a pod. We're both incredibly introverted, but we kind of don't really get sick of each other. which is amazing because, he's even more reserved than I am, and I'm probably a bigger presence in the house. So I'm amazed that he doesn't get sick of me. And it's, he is a very calm, very stoic individual, but he has a lot of kind of emotional intelligence. He listens to me and really hears what I say, and has always throughout my whole life, in moments where I've really needed someone to just be able to hear me, he's been there. And he is a big nature person. He has the most impeccable garden you've ever seen in your life. And he loves animals like me. And we love the same things. We love going for walks in the countryside and going to the garden centre to look at the fish. And yeah, he keeps me grounded. He always has, and I never let him forget how important he is to me.
That's really beautiful, and it reminds me of two things from my educational studies and my own pursuits. The first one, I don't know if you ever come across this TED Talk by Rita Pearson called Every Kid Needs a Champion. Oh. And it's probably... No, I
haven't, but I'm going to go and listen.
It's probably my most watched TED Talk ever. So I probably listened to it more than 100 times throughout my teenage years, partly because I have been fortunate to have those champions in my life, and also as I was doing coaching and as I was doing like teaching assistant work, I wanted to be that champion for others, knowing what it felt like. The second thing that stood out from your description about Steve is this idea or the practice of listening to children and actually appreciating that they have a very valid perspective and a very crucial need to be heard and to speak. So that's really remarkable, I guess, to see that there is an adult there who could role model the very best of what being a champion could be. I'm mindful, again, from my own research as well, that that obviously what's online and what's public there has to be a boundary, and there has to be a distinction between your own personal and private life. And as we discussed over lunch, the most challenging part of my job as an interviewer is navigating that boundary and tension between giving you the privacy and the boundary, but also helping you to facilitate the sharing of your story so that it is legacy worthy. So in terms of your home life, open-ended question, is there anything else, either tributes or either things for yourself in 30, 40, 50 years time that you would like to be captured in this recording? No leading questions, just all yours.
Well, I kind of imagine that in 30, 40, 50 years time, I will still remember exactly what it was like to be a child. And I still really connect with the kind of childlike version of myself. I suppose I would struggle to remember what it's like to be maybe earlier than about 8, but I know exactly what it was like to be 9 years old and to...
So 9 was the most memorable year?
Yeah, for me, yeah. It was the kind of the most difficult, the most turbulent, and I think as I grew up, I really struggled to listen to what my body was telling me about my life and the way that my life kind of felt out of control. And I tried to exercise control as much as I could, and I really did. There was a point in my life when I was about 11 where I, strutted down to a solicitor's office and kind of asked someone to do pro bono work for me. I was quite a strong-minded child. I really kind of felt that I had quite a clear sense of what was right and wrong at that age.
Wow.
And in many ways, I'm very proud of that version of myself. But it has.
Did you meet Atticus Finch at that solicitor's?
I wish.
Sorry, go on.
No. I lost the plot.
what makes a great story.
What was I saying?
You said you were strong-minded. You went to the solicitor's office to make them do pro bono work for you.
I didn't make them do anything, but I did kind of politely request it, and it did work. So yeah, I suppose I really struggled with people telling me what to do when I was younger, and so I think that's probably why I didn't get on with a lot of my teachers growing up. I really never subscribed to the kind of adult-child power dynamics thing, and felt quite a strong sense of righteousness about that. And I think that has evolved in my personality into what is kind of like a contradictory profile of characteristics. I think on one hand, people consider me to be very compassionate and empathetic and sensitive even, but I also am very boundaried, and I have a very thick skin, and I am very vocal.
What does that mean with thick skin?
Like it takes quite a lot to hurt me. I am kind of very aware of the feeling of being hurt. Like I'm sensitive, I'm kind of emotionally available to be hurt, but actually I have such a strong sense of myself and what I value in my life that typically I don't get hurt anymore, because I surround myself with people who have my best interests at heart. And the people that caused so much pain and suffering when I was younger are no longer in my life, and I've healed from that. I've healed from that through years and years of therapy, which I think, is a huge part of my story. And it was the way that I learned to listen to what my body was telling me. I think a lot of the work that I have done in my academic life has been a way of trying to get my body and my mind to speak the same language. And that's why I'm kind of interested in the senses, I think, and embodiment in general. So I'm kind of constantly working on myself and trying to understand myself still through my work, which is nice, I think.
Wow.
Living is a kind of constant process of trying to understand the experiences that you're having. And I think that work is worthwhile, because it's what kind of makes you aware of your own boundaries and your own enjoyment in things. I think I don't believe in the notion of guilty pleasure.
Wow. Thank you so much for being so honest and vulnerable and so courageous in reflecting about that period. And I think for me personally, I resonate with some portions of it, in that, as you were saying, your stepdad passed away when you were 11. My mum passed away when I was 12 after a long fight with cancer.
Gosh.
But a few years ago, I came across a research or pseudo-research, I'm not sure, done by Malcolm Gladwell. He coined the term eminent orphans. Basically, their idea is that he went through the Wikipedia pages as a proxy of people who have achieved great things. Obviously,
he's always interested in that. Yeah.
But he kind of realized that more than half or even more of the people who have those Wikipedia pages have lost a parent before the age of 12. And it's interesting because you would usually expect the child to, the family would have lost half of the income, probably lost a lot of stability, probably lost a lot of support. So as a result, they should have, fallen off the rails. But actually, there is this great group of people who experienced that and then, went on to achieve great things. And one of the hypotheses I think that he gave was that if someone is able to overcome that period of pain, of suffering, of uncertainty, and of doubt, then what else could hurt them? What else could phase them? What else could scare them?
Yes, yeah.
Obviously, there's I'm not sure if this is rigorous scientific research, but I felt like I resonated in a regard where when you've been through something like that at a young age, it puts things in perspective, you know, failing a test or getting cut from a sports team. You know, does it really matter?
Absolutely, yeah. And I kind of hate that adage, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Because on one hand, you kind of think, well, actually, but it really hurt. You know, sure, maybe it did make me stronger, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I wanted to experience it, you know? And so, yeah, I think it's maybe a bit of a cop-out, but it is true. There's like a real kernel of truth there, that people who have been through really difficult things in their life, they've been through hardship and they've had to be resilient. They've kind of flexed that muscle before, that, okay, it's time to rebuild. It's time to really think how we're going to cope with this.
At what age did you start to even realise that you were actually strong and independent and thoughtful and conscientious and righteous? Like, when did you have a moment when you were like, you know what, I am in this world and I'm doing well?
Yes, I mean, I think there were moments when I was sort of, I suppose, 7 or 8, where I started making decisions for myself. And I wasn't kind of relying on anyone else to make those decisions for me, because they couldn't, actually. That's something complicated, I suppose, about being a child. You know, in many ways you're reliant on other people, adults usually, who, you know, are supposed to act in your best interests, but in some very special circumstances it has to be you to make a boundary with someone, and I started doing that very early because I was pushed to do that very early.
So when we were getting our iced tea, we both noticed on the wall The Boy, the Fox, the Mole and the Horse, which is one of our favourite books. In your life, you were the girl. Who were the fox, the mole and the horse?
Oh my goodness. Oh my god.
You can introduce your own characters too. Your own animals if you need. But it's a framework to think about your life.
That's quite a difficult question, actually.
Welcome to the podcast.
In many ways I've always felt very independent, and I have always had, you know, Steve as my centrifugal force. You know, he's the person that has always kept my life together, has given me stability and safety, and a kind of sanctuary, a place to rest. It's the only place where I sleep well, his house. And I can sleep for 10 hours there, and I think it's because I'm making up for not sleeping anywhere near enough elsewhere a lot of the time. So yeah, I suppose I'm very lucky in the sense that I have that person, and it's, you know, I've never believed in the blood is thicker than water thing. You know, that connection is not a blood connection, but it is the most real one in my life. And so maybe that's my horse. I don't know. But yeah, I think, you know, I wonder, it seems wrong even to say this, but, you know, I have a dog called Maple. And I think Maple was a little puzzle piece that completed the puzzle for me. She is really special. She's a rescue from Spain. She had never been in a house when I adopted her. She was living on the streets her whole life. And she is perfect. She's a bit weird, but that's kind of what makes her perfect to me. She's so special. And in many ways, I think she's made me a better person. Which seems like, you know, a strange thing to say, but I've had many conversations
With Maple.
With Maple. I have had conversations with Maple. She understands me better.
So she's your supervisor.
Yeah. In many ways, she's my supervisor in some things, I think. She's certainly a better smeller than I am. But she, you know...
Yeah, she's more of an expert in smell than you.
Yes, yeah, I mean, all dogs are. And that is something that I think we should actually really appreciate. Although, you know, actually it turns out that humans are much better smellers than we really think. And when it comes down to it and we do tests, we can rival dogs in some ways. Not all compounds, but in some compounds we're really good at discriminating things, differentiating things, detecting things. We're actually really good at smelling. We're just not trained to do it. We're not taught to do it. But, you know, having dogs my whole life, I think, is actually very special, because dogs, they don't live in the world of the mind, typically. They live in their bodies, and they do what feels good, and they nap. I've really almost never been able to nap my whole life, because I've struggled to get to a point where I'm relaxed enough to do that. And, you know, they just live their life, and they appreciate things, you know. They appreciate going around the garden and smelling things. And
they appreciate people.
And they
whenever
appreciate
you
people.
come back, they're always happy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think, you know, there's a lot to learn from dogs about
Loyalty
the way that
as
they
well.
live their life. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, they're very special to me, I think.
Wow. So then, after GCSE, when you had the difficult time, did you rebound for A-levels? And leading up to university, what were you feeling at the time? And was there a smell that led you to English literature at Exeter? I struggled with my mental health all the way up until towards the end of I have struggled with my mental health my whole life. I had CPTSD. I didn't realise it's complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And the complex bit is when essentially the traumatic experiences that happen to you happen very early in life. And so they kind of shaped the way that your brain functioned at that early stage when your brain was still developing and kind of forming, becoming itself. And so I have had a lot of therapy that started after I left home. Once I was at Exeter and I was kind of away from my safety net. I was away from Steve, which, you know, probably did not help. Definitely did not help. But it was the catalyst for me to realise that I needed to do something. I needed to do something about it. And I got through my A-levels, I think, probably because I had great teachers who were very supportive, but it wasn't easy. And then when I was left to my own devices as an undergraduate, you know, being out of the home for the first time, I think things started to really unravel. Because I didn't have the structure as well, you know. Even if you don't have a great experience in school, which I really, really didn't, that it does lend your life a kind of structure to live by. It kind of somewhat keeps you going. You moving.
Yeah. So although and this is very typical for a lot of people who have CPTSD, which I actually don't really identify with anymore because I've had enough therapy that I've kind of processed
Through
a lot
CBT,
of that.
cognitive behaviour.
No, that didn't work for me at all. The version that really, really worked for me was internal family systems, which is a kind of therapeutic model that relies on thinking about parts, like the parts of yourself kind of that come up. And there are certain terms that make a lot of sense for me that are used in that model, such as like blending. So very often if you are triggered by something that you might have experienced before, you become blended with the past version of yourself. So you're kind of, it's almost like you and that past version of yourself are kind of enmeshed, and you need to be able to kind of gently peel away the old part of yourself to recognize that you're now safe. And so it just required developing a very close attention to what my body was telling me, like learning to listen, and developing a kind of compassion for the past versions of myself that went through that, and being the person to offer the things that past version of me needed, because what that past version of me needed is often what I need now. So I'm quite good at that, and I think that, you know, helps with any kind of challenges that arise in my life now. I can kind of sit and listen.
You've mentioned a few times on the idea or the practice of listening to how your body feels. What does it actually mean in practice? Like, is it like you feel like shivering and therefore that's fear, so you need to run away? Or you I don't know, you maybe like feel a sense of pain? Like how, what does that mean to listen to your body? What does it mean to not listen to your body?
Yes, it can arise in so many different ways. I have always had a lot of kind of bodily problems throughout my whole life, which I now realise in many ways are responses to trauma. So growing up, I had really severe stomach aches, and I was constantly in and out of the doctors trying to work out what on earth was going on, you know, and the doctors couldn't work it out. They said, you're perfectly healthy, there's nothing wrong with you. And okay, so why am I in so much pain? And that kind of had a resurgence when I was an undergrad. I started getting this really severe stomach pain again, and I thought, that's not good. And I thought maybe it was something to do with diet or something to do with my routine, but actually it was just that I had a lot to process that I hadn't started processing yet. I also have always had incredibly sensitive skin, which reacts to absolutely everything. I'm allergic to everything. It's really embarrassing. Ironically, I'm allergic to perfume and like most scented products. And I'm allergic to the sea and the sun and washing up liquid and detergent and literally everything. But it flares most when I'm really stressed. So if my skin is really kind of, if I'm breaking out in hives, you probably can't really see at the moment, but I have like a couple of patches. At the moment. Not currently, but I was recently.
The difficulty of the question.
So
turn it up.
Yeah. Yeah, so I will notice these things in myself, you know, or, you know, it might be that I'm sweating or that I am fidgeting or whatever it is. I spent so much of my life ignoring how I felt about everything to just try and push through, that now I'm much more kind of attuned to what it is that my body is always saying, like, this isn't comfortable, this situation doesn't feel right, and I actually just have to think through, okay, why is that? How can I make this experience better for myself, to comfort myself, to make myself feel more safe?
Which makes me think, now that you've had all of these experiences and learnings through both structured practice of therapy and also unstructured just life experience, and now you're an educator yourself, often looking after other people, do you notice in other people then that sometimes they're not very aware of their bodies or their natural instincts or their inner child, and how does your own experiences affect the unique way through which you approach your educational teaching?
It's a great question. I really see my own pedagogical practices as a way of paying forward some of the generosity that I was shown, especially during my undergraduate years, by kind of much more senior members of the English faculty at Exeter who really, really shaped who I am as a scholar and a pedagogue and a person. And they know who they are, and I kind of talk about them all the time. I kind of mention them as much as I can. But they showed me what it meant to really put the person first. So to see students not as students, but as people. And I think I typically... Cup went flying for listeners. I typically engage a lot more pastorally than a lot of other supervisors. Not again.
I'm gonna hold it.
I engage with students on a pastoral level a lot more than other supervisors, and that works for some people. And for those who are, perfectly self-directed and know what they're doing and happy, I don't need to go there, but I have built very special connections with some of my students who haven't felt heard or seen in the Cambridge context before. And I really, really value my ability to do that for other people. And I maintain very strong boundaries with my students, but I am also very much emotionally available for them. Like, they are very much allowed, and they know this, they are very much allowed to bring things to the supervision that maybe, don't pertain to the work specifically, but pertain to their lives and the way that they're producing that work. Because that's really, really important. We're all human beings. We all, want connection. And sometimes people just need a little bit of courage, a little bit of encouragement. Yeah. In order to be able to do the work. It's, nobody at Cambridge has any problem with their intellectual ability to do the work. But a lot of people have, had kind of challenging upbringings. They've been pushed a lot, or maybe they haven't. Maybe they've kind of, until this point, they've not actually really been pushed. Everything's been really easy for them. They're just kind of one of those people that things come to naturally. And that kind of change of pace, the different kind of requirements in this setting can really throw people off sometimes. And that's perfectly normal. And, Cambridge has, for many years, had a very kind of overburdened counselling service, which means that sometimes people don't get the help that they need. And so, okay, maybe we're spending 5 minutes in a supervision doing a little bit of patchwork, we're putting a plaster on something. But that's really important sometimes, just to get people through until the end of term, when they can go home and be with their families and kind of
and actually sleep at Steve's house.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So yeah, it's really important to me. I do build quite strong relationships with my students, and it is, I think, something that sets me apart here in some ways. But the reason that I'm able to do that is because I'm not that far on in my academic career yet, and I have that time and space to be able to fully be there and to show up for the students.
You're still empathetic. You know what it's like to...
Yeah, I'm close to it. I remember exactly what it was like to be them. And once you become a professor, you have so many burdens on your time that it's impossible to give to everyone. But I've been able to focus on teaching for a little while.
Which I think in one of your posts, you've made it very clear that during term time, your top priority is your students.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a remarkably mature and professional and good thing to make clear.
Yeah, I mean, when that post went viral, I was was towards the end of term, but I was still teaching full time. I was like, okay, I mean, I can be here and look at what everyone's saying and kind of try and catch up on the conversation, but ultimately I have a job, and that job is to look after my students. So
at Exeter, I know you had that very influential assignment on perfume marketing. But just before that assignment, how did you envision or conceptualize your academic career or your professional career to unfold? Like, were you expecting to do a grad degree? Were you expecting to write a book? Or were you going to go into investment banking? I don't know.
Well, no, that would be maths. Yeah, I did. I went to university with the kind of express motivation to become an academic. I didn't know anything about what that would be like, really, when I started. I had a kind of big wake-up call in, I think, the second year of my undergrad, when the strike started happening around issues about pensions and that kind of thing. And I realised that, this is actually not a very stable career, and actually it's really cutthroat and quite difficult. Back then it seemed quite difficult. Now it seems practically impossible for most people to have stability. And so, but, you know, I was full of verve and love for literature and the discipline and for writing. I've, always considered myself a writer. I didn't really know what I was going to write necessarily, but once I found smell studies, it all just kind of snowballed in a very natural way.
Because it seemed to me that you realised that this was actually not only just a interesting topic, but it was actually an evolving field of study, right?
Yeah.
How did you realise that?
I came across an article by Hans Rindersbacher called What's This Smell? Yeah. What's This Smell? I had quite limited resources available to me at Exeter in comparison to Cambridge. That was the most exciting thing about Cambridge when I first got here. Was
hence why you're an advocate of open public libraries.
Yes, exactly. I really struggled because smell studies is such a small field, and because there hasn't been that much written about it, and what has been written about it hasn't been read by a lot of people. It's typically not stocked in libraries. It's really hard to find, and so I did as much as I could, and in many ways what I love about smell studies is that I'm constantly breaking new ground, and my individual thoughts, opinions, feelings about what I engage with in literature or in real life really matter, because this stuff hasn't really been turned over and over and over again. So it was okay. It didn't really matter that I didn't have the best access to resources. Obviously would matter by the time I got to the PhD, when I needed to be doing literature reviews and that kind of thing. I found energy and passion in...
And that was your penultimate year at Exeter?
It was, yes. Yeah, the first year I was kind of... I did a lot of the groundwork. I learned vast amounts of critical theory, which is still my favourite thing to teach now, and doesn't very often get taught. Anyway, I swear I am an English scholar. It doesn't often get taught at Cambridge. It's because of what we call the practical criticism emphasis, which is the specifically Cambridge way of doing English literature, which is to look at the formal qualities of a work rather than the context or applying critical frameworks and that kind of thing. So I very often get wheeled out to do these kind of critical theory seminars because nobody else really wants to do them. And it's a lot of fun for me because it changes the way that people see the world and see themselves, as well as the text that they're engaging with. So yeah, the first year was all about these kind of theoretical foundations, and I read a lot of canonical stuff that I hadn't read in that first year, and then in the second year is when I really kind of found what I wanted to work on.
So then you're applying for grad school, master's and PhD. You've identified this niche area that is understudied, underappreciated, but you also found it to be interesting and an opportunity to advance the field and humanities knowledge. How did you pitch this field and this idea to get a master's and to get a scholarship for your PhD?
Wow, it was a bit of a challenge, and I definitely had pushback from some people. It wasn't always straightforward. I think I needed people who saw the vision, who smelled the smells. I don't know. It was really about finding the kind of people who were open to it, but also proving that there was such an abundance of material in these texts that often we've taught and read and that are on syllabuses around the country, but looking at the olfactory content makes you see them in a completely different light, and so it's never been a challenge for me to prove that, because there's such an abundance of material. It's just about, sometimes finding the right combination of authors to make people realise that, okay, this is heavy duty stuff. This isn't just some silly, whimsical thing. I mean, there's nothing wrong with whimsy, but sometimes when you're trying to convince people that your work is worthwhile, you kind of have to go with the Vladimir Nabokovs of the world and say, look, this is really important to this book that almost everyone has read and nobody's noticed it before. And I have, and I've been thinking about it for ages. And so, I think that's how I went about it, was just doing my best to show that it was worthwhile through evidence, but also picking the kind of authors who would grab people's attention, the Nobel Prize winners and that kind of thing.
So I think in one of your public posts to the audience, you wrote that you draw on the well-documented history of olfactory prejudice in order to examine its contemporary relevance. We tend to think that our desire to avoid bad smells is an instinctual protective mechanism, but evidence suggests that we're taught which smells to find disgusting. The sense of smell then is shaped by society and is influenced by the prejudices that pervade it. That's quite profound and maybe not very intuitive, right? Because we would think that I know that this is a bad smell, but I know that you've used the evidence that children before the age of 2 don't actually have as much sensitivity as we do now. Could you elaborate more on that powerful insight, and in particular, how did you come to believe that this is actually true, this argument?
Okay, so although there's not that much work done on smell in the world, there is a lot of work done on the emotions. So there are some kind of foundational figures in the field of what we might call affect studies, but affect studies is a big umbrella term and means a lot depending on the discipline that you're in. But there's a lot of psychological work on disgust in particular, actually heaps of it. And it's pretty well, what's the word that I'm looking for? It's pretty well established, I would say, that our emotions are acculturated. They are socialized. The way that we engage with the world is dependent on the culture that we grow up in, and the way that we're taught to engage with the world by our parents and by society and by all of these other kinds of apparatuses that surround us all the time. And the work that I very often refer to is the work of Paul Rosin and his kind of collaborators, of which there are many. I love when you refer to a psychological study, you're often referring to like an 8-person authored study. So you feel bad because you have to go with the lead author because you can't remember 8 names. But so I kind of read extensively about disgust and how children respond to disgust. There's also some kind of old psychological stuff by people like Sylvan Tompkins, who did a lot of that kind of observing work of looking at children and seeing how they respond to things. You know, do they curl their lip? Do they crease their brow? Do they frown? Do they sneer, etc.? And basically what they discovered is that, you know, and this is clear to anyone who's ever had a child, really, which I haven't, but, you know, I've been around babies before. Very young children, they just don't have a disgust sensitivity. You know, they'll put anything in their mouths. And they just don't really seem to mind. And you have to teach a child, no, don't pick that lolly up off the floor, you know, don't, that's not edible. And they don't, you know, have a problem with being around their own vomit or their own poo or whatever.
But even that is culturally trained.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so, yeah, the full disgust sensitivity doesn't develop until we're between the ages of about 5 and 7.
I would have thought, though, from an evolutionary perspective, we are obviously evolving to survive, and smell is one of the great central indicators of danger.
Yes, yeah, this is true, but we're also we often misinterpret signals. So sometimes people will sense danger in a smell when there really is none, and kind of vice versa as well. Sometimes we'll think, oh, that smells really nice, like cyanide, smells like almonds. That will kill you. You know? So it's challenging. I think what I will say is that there are obviously very good reasons to avoid certain smells. You know, the smells of decay or feces or whatever. And it makes complete sense that we as a society have developed cultural practices of avoiding those, you know, moving waste away from the home, and that kind of thing. It makes, complete sense. Although the smells themselves won't cause you harm, direct contact with the objects emitting them might. So, you know, smell does have a protective, active function in keeping us safe. It's just that we don't have a particularly strong handle on what is actually dangerous and what isn't. I think we typically almost automatically, subconsciously tend to think that smells themselves are dangerous, and that's not true. Sometimes substances emit smells and the substances are dangerous, but the smells themselves are not. And when we engage with the world, thinking, particularly when we engage with people who might smell different, thinking in that way, or like feeling, actually it's about feeling often rather than a kind of cognitive process. Feeling endangered, feeling unsafe because of that smell often has significant social consequences.
Which, speaking of significant social consequences, I think in your research you uncover that long history of prejudice linked to smell. And I know how you examined, for example, how Hitler described the Jewish people using disgusting odor language, and how similar smell-based slurs were made to dehumanize people during the slave trade. What do you feel like those examples or other examples reveal about the power of smell as a tool of hate then? So how is this so prevalent and so intense, yet in the 21st century still understudied and so underappreciated? How does that make sense?
Okay. Yes, I have much to say about this. So,
interview starts now.
So I personally think that the reason that smell is used across categories to demonize, humiliate, etc., is because it is very forcefully emotive. When we use olfactory language, even when we read olfactory language, we kind of have this bodily response to it. We're like, ooh, that sounds horrible, you know? And it is a kind of language that is very difficult to rationalize. You kind of, and because we typically don't think about smell critically, we're not encouraged to ever, we can use that language uncritically, unthoughtfully. It's something that produces intense emotions without us kind of thinking about it consciously. And so it works really, really well as a way to other people and to prevent the kind of thought processes necessary to combat that kind of thinking.
You've also noted in an Exeter alumni interview how smell is intensely emotive and deeply personal, which is what you just said, making it a generative subject, but we're typically unaware of its political pools. What in particular do you think makes the sense of smell so special compared to, say, sight or sound in terms of that emotional punch, or are they all complementary?
I think the primary thing is that smell is invasive. Smell is taken into the body, and so it has...
So you're now talking about, I guess, the actual experience of smell, not just the reading of smell.
Yes, but the reading of smell, the talking about smell evokes the same kind of feelings that we have when we have an actual smell, because we imaginatively kind of run that experience.
Okay.
We think, what would that be like to experience that smell, to have that encounter?
Okay, so smell is invasive because we can even almost visualize the thing coming in.
Well, we can imagine ourselves experiencing that kind of contaminating effect of having the other enter your body, kind of, you know, dirty the sanctity of your kind of... And we have this idea, I think, of, you know, being these kind of individual bubbles, and we don't like the idea of other people being able to kind of enter that bubble, to contaminate, to affect that bubble. But smell is one of those things that does that. It's my friend Will Tullett, who is also a smell studies scholar, says it's a kind of an asocial sociality. So it's a very social sense in that we are all communing, you know, we're all breathing in each other's smells, we're all experiencing the same smell if it's filling a space. But it is also very discomforting. It feels asocial in that it breaks down the boundaries between self and other.
Wow. You had a ladybug.
A little ladybug?
There. I'm not sure if it went up your sleeve.
Oh, great heavens. Well, I'm communing with the ladybugs today. I can't feel it.
That's
okay. I'm not afraid of bugs. So.
But on that, it reminds me of the other insight that you seem to have grasped so well with your interdisciplinary study, in that smell can create gender, class, sexual, racial, even species power dynamics.
Yeah.
We know from sociology studies and critical theories that power is inherently a very nuanced term and concept.
Absolutely.
How did you, I guess, think about power and ethics in these contexts of smell? Is it a simple way of just hierarchy and inequalities based, like a Marxist perspective of economics? Is it like a post-structuralist perspective of power being this like everywhere force? Is it a liberal perspective that everything just fits in an organism, or is it a realist perspective where everything is in tension with each other? Like, how did you conceptualize power in this interdisciplinary, intersectional manner?
Yeah, okay. Well, since I'm a literary person, I often like to couch things in terms of narrative. So I often think about power in terms of who has control over the narrative. So
the idea is actually the main contest.
Yeah. So I obviously work on interpersonal olfaction, and interpersonal ethics. So the way that people treat one another, and how these kind of identity categories like class or sex or whatever come into the way that people perceive one another. And so I'm really interested in how stereotypes form and who creates them, essentially. So a lot of the work that I do is about stereotypes, not all of it, but to take, for example, race. That's one particular thing that is very, like, in the world of olfactory ethics, to use my own term.
You better cite yourself.
The kind of language that is used is very motivated by olfactory stereotypes. And so I'm interested in tracing the history of those olfactory stereotypes, how they emerged, why they emerged, how they were perpetuated.
And you think it's a conscious perpetuation?
It can be. I think it depends. I think it depends. You know, humans are very, very susceptible to messaging. And so very often it's people are not, Machiavellian. They're not sitting there thinking, how can I oppress this group? I think, in some situations that is the case. If you trace back the history of, for example, stereotypes surrounding African American slaves, it was very much in the best interests of slave owners to actively construct these individuals as animalistic and unworthy of human rights. And so one way of doing that is to say, A, these people smell rank, they're beastly, or these people have an exceptional sense of smell, they're beastly. So you have these two things that operate in tandem. They're both stereotypes. And they're working together to construct the identity of these people as less than human. And so the work that I do is I will often find, not necessarily, I don't do it for everything. I don't go back all the way through history, because some of these ideas have been around since antiquity. People have been saying that prostitutes stink since before even the Romans were around. So
in that example, do you think that the smell there of they stink, is that an evocation of the sense of smell by saying they stink, which is related to smell? Or do you think that their social position at the time actually did objectively, in reality, give them a different smell that is actually neutral but is now associated with being stink? Like, I think it's
both. It's the two things. It might be that prostitutes might have smelled. They might have. There might have been. It's difficult to say for an entire group of people. That there's a kind of homogenous smell, but it certainly might be the case that some of these people might have smelled. They typically weren't well off. They probably weren't able to look after themselves in the way that other people might have been. But also, it is smell as morality. For thousands of years, we have been using olfactory language to make moral judgments about people for the exact same reasons that we've been talking about, because it is effective. It really works. It really does create that kind of antagonism and that idea that these people are not the ones that we want in our community. They're the other. They're the out group. It works really effectively, and so we still see it today. And to come back to that idea of who is structuring this narrative, the thing that I see so often now, and I find it really horrifying, and I think everyone who follows me on Twitter knows this, is this idea that Indian people smell bad. It's kind of a running joke in inverted commas, because it's not funny. It's never funny. And these posts get hundreds of thousands of likes. So this is a thing that is in the public consciousness at the moment. And it's really problematic, because we can learn associations before we've ever even encountered
the actual smell.
Yeah. And of course, you know, it doesn't make any sense to talk about a whole group of people and talk about their collective smell, because race doesn't have a smell. You know, race is a construct. So, yeah, but even, you know, if you're talking about, for example, the smell of spices, you can learn a negative association with that smell through this social messaging that is constantly being perpetuated online at the moment. So these things, they never die. They just find new ways of appearing. And it's a horrible thing, obviously. You know, it's kind of my bread and butter because it's what I work on. I wish it didn't exist, but it is constantly relevant. It has been relevant through all of history.
Wow. I know you're a proud feminist.
Of course, as should everyone be.
How does smell, I guess, interact with the different waves of feminisms that we've seen that challenges traditional patriarchy, and how is smell, I guess, in sexism, perhaps in misogyny, how is smell leveraged? And also, you know, back to your idea of the perfumes, smell's also a contributing force of sex, right, or gender.
Yeah.
I don't know, how do you
It's a way that people sell fashion. Yeah, and express their gender. Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question, and there are so many different kind of angles to come at it from. So in general, the work that I do in the thesis, because olfactory misogyny has been relatively well documented, I kind of went a slightly divergent route in the thesis and did something slightly different, but there's plenty of work to suggest that femininity has been associated with smell for all of history, essentially, and that in particular female outgroups such as old women, witches, prostitutes, have all been characterized by a kind of foul smell. And it's kind of straightforward to see how that might arise, because it follows the same kind of logic that other smell messaging does. In my thesis, what I did was, instead of focusing on that so much, I did do a bit of that, and I think it is really important to kind of have that foundation there. I then focused on a kind of opposite logic, a positive logic, which is this idea that sometimes women smell so good that you simply can't help but encroach on their boundaries. So this is the kind of thing that is represented in Nabokov's Lolita, or Patrick Susskind's The Perfume of a Murderer. The Perfume of a Murderer? Is that right? Yeah. It's one of those situations where, is that right? I'm having a crisis. Perfume, The Story of a Murderer. There we go. I was like, The Perfume of a Murderer doesn't sound right at all. Okay, Perfume, The Story of a Murderer. Where we're seeing this kind of like she asked for it idea coming up through smell. So that's a very underdeveloped aspect, I think, of smell studies at the moment that I'm attempting to rectify.
The smell becomes a tool to help the powerful in whatever context.
To convince others that, that actually, they're an aesthete, someone with a refined sense of beauty, and what they're doing by pursuing this 14-year-old girl because she smells so delectable. In Lolita, he says that she smells of orchards in Nymphetland, and it has this magical grasp on him that he can't behave any differently towards her than he does. And so and we see this pop up, not, to be fair, that frequently, but we do see it pop up in real life as well. There's this example that I often refer to of this MP who posted on Twitter that young girls have a creamy, buttery smell, and once they get over the age of, I don't know, I think it was 23 or something, they kind of putrefy. I know, it's kind of barking mad, but it is reflective of broader conversations about femininity and aging and desirability and the politics of attractiveness. So yeah, and then obviously, of course, there's, you know, perfume and advertising and the way that we present ourselves to the world. And of course, smells are not inherently or intrinsically gendered. In certain periods in history, the things that we now think of as feminine or masculine were either unisex or completely flipped on their head. You know, there were princes wearing florals. I love that idea. You know, there are these kind of wonderful stories about kings going to balls and finding their favourite fragrance on a woman that they were dancing with. And they go, wow, you smell amazing, I want that. And so I'm quite excited about that idea. I think those kind of rigid categories are not very helpful to us, and we should just engage with what we enjoy and be open to liking things and to disliking things. And that is a very personal, subjective thing, and there's not any sense of objectivity to it. So I always say that getting to know your smell preferences is just another way of getting to know yourself.
What's your smell preference?
Well, my smell preferences are slightly different to how they used to be after I lost my sense of smell. So I love gourmand perfumes now, whereas I was kind of ambivalent about them before. But the smells of food are much more palatable in perfumes to me now, I think, than some kind of herbaceous things, which I would have liked before. Those kind of slightly acrid, complex fragrances smell a little strange to me still, but my sense of smell is constantly getting better, and something amazing about better, yeah, because
can it be better, or is that your
it certainly
ethics
can,
and your own imposition on what is better?
I suppose, you know what, I suppose more sensitive is probably the politically correct way of thinking about it. Yeah, I'm not trying to demean my fellow anosmics or parosmics, but yeah, I think it's really important that we engage with smell, because it's such a significant source of pleasure in our lives, and it's and yeah, we're kind of taught to avoid pleasure or at least to kind of be a bit cagey about pleasure, you know, to not really express that we do things just because they feel good, because we enjoy them. There's no harm in that. In fact, it's kind of what life is all about, you know.
It's about pleasure.
To some extent. I mean, I think you can go too far. That I think, you know, there's a sense in which sometimes people can get so wrapped up in their own pleasure that they forget about other people. And that's problematic, of course, but, you know, there's nothing wrong with just like putting your face in the basil plant.
What do you make of the timing and the fact that the 18-month that you've lost your smell during COVID is probably also the 18-month that you made the most progress on smell? Reminds me of like King Lear of once he was blind then he could see. So how did that contrast of you not having it influence or impact your research of it? Like, did you gain a greater appreciation and importance because you've lost it?
I think it's really shaped where I want my academic trajectory to go next. It didn't really affect too much of the work that I did for the thesis. I think it helped in this framework that I developed called active toleration, which is kind of one of the responses that I have to how we deal with those experiences, those very real lived experiences of discomfort when we encounter a smell that we really, really hate, you know, that we find disgusting and uncomfortable. Because I, as you probably have gathered from this conversation, you know, I'm not one for ignoring what our body is feeling. I don't think that's helpful. But I do think that we have to kind of actively engage with those experiences and to think about them consciously, and to find ways of coping that are conducive to respect and care in a social context. So I think losing my sense of smell made me think about those experiences differently, but especially it made me think about this project that I would love to develop further, which is about smell disorders and what it means for so many of us to have experienced a smell disorder. And there are lots of people who experience them regardless of the pandemic. Lots of people are born without a sense of smell or with a reduced sense of smell. And so and we typically don't really think about it because smell is so denigrated in society, and so I think that work needs to be done. Yeah, I think the weirdest thing that I experienced when I lost my sense of smell was my sudden imperviousness to disgust. So the things that I found disgusting before suddenly really lost all of their glamour, and I was just like, well, it's just a thing, it's just dog poo. It's I don't care about the experience anymore of picking up dog poo with a poo bag or taking the bins out or whatever. Suddenly I had this kind of ability to engage with the world in a very different way, and in many ways it felt like a superpower, but it also meant that
ignorance is bliss
to some extent. Yeah. But it also came with losing my sense of smell and losing the pleasure that comes from the sense of smell. And so I wouldn't go back.
So why did God create this sense of smell in humans?
Well, I have to say I don't personally believe in God. And I don't really want to get into evolutionary psychology right now. But it is clear that the sense of smell. Well, there are multiple purposes of smell, I think. The answer is that there are multiple. It does protect us in some ways from certain things that could harm us. Sure, that might be a learned experience, but lots of things are learned experiences. Like very, very little is like baked into us, right from the beginning. Lots of things we have to learn, even if it's really important to our survival. So there is that, but I do also think that smell was made for us to enjoy things. There are lots of things in the world that have that kind of dual ambivalence, I suppose, and I'm always really interested in ambivalence, how the bad and the good always coexist in a relationship with one another and speak to one another constantly, and we have to negotiate that a lot.
So with smell, I guess there is a broader categorization of good and bad, but what are the other segmentations that you have found through your research or in your interpretation? Like, how do we group and segment different types of smell?
Yeah, so there's quite a long history of people attempting to define the kind of what they call a fragrance wheel, where they put it into different categories. I loved this one that was developed, I think in the 1700s, where one of the categories was goatee. Hircine means like goatee. Like they had a whole fragrance category for the smell of goats, and that we don't really spend much time around goats ordinarily anymore, and so we're unfamiliar with the smell of goats, but they actually have a very potent smell. And if you were living in the 1700s, when animals lived in the streets in cities and were moved through constantly, or you were living in the countryside and you had animals, livestock, you would be very familiar with the smell of goats and other kinds of animals. And so these things shift over time. We now have synthetic perfumery. So we have new categories, like entirely new categories that nobody in the 1700s would have been able to conceptualize. We have fragrances now that people have never smelt in the history of the world. because we have created them anew. It's the only sense for which we can create something nobody has ever experienced. And that's so cool, I think. Oh, sorry, I get really excited about this kind of thing. I know that not everyone else is that excited about it, but I think it's really cool. That's why Chanel No. 5 was such a big hit, because they included synthetic compounds that nobody had ever experienced before. And so people were smelling this new fragrance and going, whoa, mind blown.
So are there infinite amount of different types of smells? Theoretically, at least?
Theoretically, yeah. Yeah, we're constantly evolving, constantly developing, constantly combining things in new ways. I think I'm really interested in niche perfumery, which is where a lot of that kind of nuanced creative work goes on in creating fragrances that are supposed to replicate experiences. And I think it's becoming more and more diverse as time goes on. We're seeing more perfumers entering the space who are women or people of colour, and it's so exciting because they're adding so much to the purview of perfumery. They're bringing new experiences.
So essentially, smell can be a great force of good on an individual and social level, as long as we do it in an ethical, moral manner.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's intuitive for some people that smell is about community. The smell of cooking, for instance, at Christmas or any other holiday that is important to you and your family and your culture, there will often be a food that is associated with it. And smell contributes more than you would ever imagine to the flavour of food. Like, without smell, food tastes like almost nothing. And so it's much more important in our daily experiences than we think, both at a kind of cultural, social level, the act of eating, the experience of the communion, the being with other people and enjoying a feast together, and also personally, the actual flavour, the delight. It's a multifaceted thing, just like lots of things are multifaceted, just like we can discriminate against people with sight, and we can also look at a beautiful flower. Everything in the world is complex and nuanced, and it has good and bad facets. I'm just exploring the underexplored negative up until this point. I mean, I get to do the positive stuff now that I'm working on my trade book, but up until that, I was mostly working on the negative side. It's nice to now be able to kind of flip the coin and see both sides.
So, before November 27th, 2024, you would post on Twitter once every 6 months at max.
Yeah.
As an introverted person. So, walk me through November 26th, the day before you made that post. What were you thinking when you took that selfie? It was on your phone, and were you always going to make that post, or?
So I actually took the selfie on the 27th in my supervision room on my lunch break. I had a 9-hour day of supervisions, and I took the selfie on my lunch break, and
you didn't realise that you were going to be labelled the face of tyranny.
I certainly didn't. Oh my gosh, I forgot about that. Oh, that was delightful. Yeah.
Everything that is wrong with this world.
Yeah, of course. I kind of slightly relished that idea. The idea that for some people who I knew that I wouldn't personally get on with because we wouldn't have the same values whatsoever, my face would really bug them every time it appeared on their timeline. I just kind of really loved that.
Every time, like 100 million times.
Yeah. It was kind of a thing on my to-do list. I needed to take the picture because I knew that I needed to post on Twitter that I was done, because my Twitter was always like a professional Twitter. Like I used it to talk to other people in smell studies and in literary studies. I didn't have like loads of followers or anything like that. I got Twitter in 2020 because we were in the pandemic, we were in lockdown. I started my PhD and I couldn't talk to anyone. I was just in my house. So I thought, okay, well, this is the way to do that, basically. And so I knew that I needed to take the picture, I needed to post it because I needed everyone in my little academic community to know that I was done in case they were developing any like postdoctoral projects that I could join. So I was like, I took the picture, it was very, just had to do it. I don't think I looked even that delighted. I think I was just like, did a thing. And then as I was walking to my bike, just like after my day of supervisions in the dark, just hit send, didn't look at it again until way later in the evening after I'd gotten home, and was like, uh-oh, it's broken containment. What has happened? But it was actually okay at first. For maybe the first 24 or 36 hours, it was just people being kind and just saying like, congratulations, well done. Yeah, I mean, I think this is part of the reason that I cope quite well with a lot going on the internet. Nothing online feels real to me. So people can say all sorts of things. I can have thousands of people flirting with me and none of it feels real. None of it. It's just something silly that's happening online, and then I go back to my real life. I go and pet my dog, or go to the gym or whatever, and that feels real to me. And I really, really appreciate all of those people. I find them so funny. That like my followers make me laugh every day, all the time. They're just so funny. They're really great at puns. I'm really bad at puns, so I appreciate that when I see it. They're just they're wholesome and funny, and I love them very dearly, but I also don't invest that much of myself in my online life, I think. So yeah, I think that's how I deal with it. So when it was kind of gaining traction and people were saying nice things, it was nice, but I'm also not, I've never been an attention seeker. I don't really want all eyes on me. I don't feel very comfortable really in that situation. I can do it when I'm talking about something that I'm passionate about, like now. But and it kind of baffles me that people are so interested in my life. They're asking me about, I'll say like, what do you want to know about me? And they're like, what bike do you ride? And I'm like, why do you care what bike I ride? I don't know. I actually don't know. It's a black one.
I think they assume you would have analysed the smell so that it's the most healthy bike for well-being.
Well, I do believe in cultivating the things around you in a way that brings you joy and pleasure. But my bike is just a bike. It's a functional item, and it's secondhand as well. I got it for free, so it's not that interesting.
So okay, but after the first honeymoon period of the 24 to 36 hours, your post was discovered by who knows who, but do you remember the first negative, extreme, outrageous comments that came in? And they would have made an impression on you, right? And how did you...
I remember the experience of reading it, but I don't remember what it said. I read so much stuff. My brain was just full of other people's opinions for a period of about a week. And I was sleeping so little that it was just like a constant never-ending cycle of people telling me what they thought and me processing, yes, okay. Because actually I'm really interested I'm really interested in other people's opinions about the work, even the negative ones, even the really negative ones, because it says something about how other people view the world, view academia, view women, view the work that I do, view smell. You know, it's all interesting to me. I'm a curious
It's all real
person.
time.
Yeah.
Which I think you mentioned in one of the audio interviews that you don't believe that your dissertation or your research is beyond criticism. However,
No.
a lot of the criticism that were levied at you, at least online, were not grounded or based in reality.
Yeah.
So did you have that mature interpretation initially, or were you like, oh my goodness, like what have I actually done?
No, I did have that initial interpretation, because, you know, you spend 3.5 years working on something, you know it inside out.
Yeah.
You know what you're contributing. You
know it's important.
Yeah. You understand precisely what your argument is. Well, ideally you do. I mean, some people submit their PhD thesis and just like, let's get it done. But I really took my time with it, and I thought about every sentence. I knew exactly how I felt about everything in it. And so, nobody was going to be able to levy a criticism of the thesis itself at me that would make sense to me, partly because they didn't have access to it. I mean, hello.
Oh.
Okay. Yeah. Oh.
We'll have lots of bloopers.
Okay, yeah. I mean, usually if you just stay calm, bees and wasps will just move on like trolls on the internet.
I was having my friend had a beekeeper.
Oh.
She's a beekeeper, and about a month ago I went and I had to put on the bee suit.
Yeah.
And it was such a cool experience to have. And when I was leaving, lots of bees were surrounding me, and apparently the way to get them to not follow you is to just walk in circles. If you walk straight, they will keep going, but if you walk in circles, they will lose track somehow.
That's so interesting.
So had that bee kept on saying, I would have made you walk around the table.
Oh, well, I love bees. I mean, we know that bees are so important, and it stresses me out no end. I said Maple was perfect. The way that Maple is imperfect, and it's the only way that Maple is imperfect, is that she eats bees.
Ooh.
And
The
I
honey?
can't stop her from doing it. I have no way of I sometimes want to, like, you know, mentally commune with her. I'm like, please stop eating the bees. We need the bees. But yeah, she has a vendetta against bees, and I don't know why, but it's something that I can't convince her out of.
So on those negative criticisms then, some of them clearly went way too far, and we know that the Cambridge police even started a formal investigation.
Oh yeah, that wasn't a criticism, that was
On the
just
threats.
a threat, yeah.
So did you feel physically unsafe during any of that time? And how did you even conceptualize what 100 million views and 20,000 reposts, like, how did you even grasp the scale of the influence that you were having at the time?
I mean, I still struggle with that, you know. Every time I post, it gets a lot of engagement, and I still think, what if all of those 50,000 people were in a room? That's a lot of people who, you know, I think the other day someone photoshopped my face onto a banknote.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
And, you know, 50,000 people liked it, and I thought, how are there 50,000 people in the world who looked at that and said, yeah, I like that? That's crazy. That's crazy. And again, it goes back to my kind of fundamental feeling that anything that goes on online doesn't really feel real, so it's kind of easy to compartmentalize. But at the time, actually, what was your first question? Because I
guess with all the criticism that turned into threats, which was obviously
yes, did
way
I feel
too
unsafe?
far. Did you feel unsafe?
I didn't. Rationally speaking, no, but ultimately yes. Like,
Yeah,
you can't
unsee it. You can't.
Yeah.
Not.
Yeah. And I felt that I had to report that particular message that I received to the police, partly out of principle, not because I really thought that anyone was actually going to come with their gang of male friends and do things to me, but partly because they, well, try and find me. You won't be able to, I know for a fact, because I've been stalked before, so I know that I'm off grid. Again, I have a lot of law. But I just think, you know, you can't read those things and not experience a kind of bodily response to them. So although I didn't think, that I was actually physically in danger,
But emotionally, it has to affect you in some way.
Yeah, it did. I mean, it was a tough week. I'm not going to lie. It didn't help that I wasn't sleeping, but I couldn't have.
You weren't sleeping because of that.
Yeah. I think I averaged about 3 hours a night for more than a week, about 9 days.
So you basically just couldn't turn off your phone because it was either buzzing or you just felt an innate curiosity that I need to check what's happening.
I just wanted to kind of follow the conversation, see how it was evolving.
Conversation's a very nice word.
Well,
at times.
Yeah, it did. It was interesting. It was interesting because, you know, I saw people going to bat for me and engaging in these actually really interesting conversations about all sorts of things, about anti-intellectualism and about the place of women in academia, and very often these people would, the people who would kind of go in really hostile would maybe soften a little.
So you felt like through your responses and stuff, you've noticed that some people were willing to change their mind and they just didn't perhaps have the EQ to write in a appropriately way?
I think people sometimes just have kind of knee-jerk reactions to things, and it's easy to offer one's opinion online and to forget that you're speaking to a real human. I don't ever forget that, but that's because I'm a typically offline person. So I think there's no difference between me discussing something with someone in person and me discussing something with someone online. But I definitely experienced people changing their minds, and I still see that, and it makes me smile every time I recognize, I have quite a good memory, and not for all things, but for some things, and I kind of recognize people's like little profile pictures or their names, and I'll remember, you know, that person said something really rude at some point, and now they think I'm the queen of the internet. And it's like, it's really interesting, because I mean, partly it's because, you know, my work has been shown to be relevant over and over again through various different things happening online. But I think it also is about the fact that I bring a lot of humanity. I bring my own humanity to any conversation that I have online. I don't want to have my walls up. I don't want to be combative with people. It's a waste of my time. I'm not going to argue with people on the internet. That's a silly thing to do, really. I have much better things to do. I'd rather be reading a book.
So I've seen a lot of your responses to people and the posts that you've made since then, obviously, from my research, but I've also seen a lot of commentary on your commentary.
Sure.
And I think the terms that kept coming up was that you were graceful, skilled, mature, thoughtful, humble. I guess now that you do have a following, and we're imagining 50,000 people in a room, how do you think about your public presence, and in particular what you engage with, how you engage with, and why you even engage with certain comments and not others? Like, what is your PR kind of approach now?
My PR approach, I'm really not PR trained. I think maybe that's kind of obvious from some of the things that I say.
You seem very well trained.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not trained. I'm not at all. I just so one thing is that I am very boundaried, and I don't like to spend too much time on there. I did at one point, when it was first all going on, I spent a lot of time, but I also was very selective in the things that I would respond to. I want to add value, and but I also want people to get to know me to some extent. So, sometimes I'll post something that helps people understand smell better. Sometimes, which I feel is adding, value, intellectual value maybe. Sometimes I will just post something that I think is funny. Or I'll, set a boundary with someone, which I think is important to model for people who feel that they can't.
Yeah.
So... yeah, I just do what feels good. Honestly, I have no strategy. I spend a lot of time avoiding social media. I'll often go kind of five days without looking at an app completely, only to kind of re-enter when I feel ready for it. And I find it a lot more easy to engage consistently with people online than I would if I was talking to people in person all the time. Because I can do it from bed, in my pajamas, with a bun, but I really try not to take it too seriously. And I think I can do that because I know that the message that I want to send and the work that I want to do will probably be best represented in my book. And if people are interested, then they might pick up the book from their library or
and
from a
that's a
bookstore.
real test of interest.
Well, yeah. But I do think that people are interested. And when people say that they want to read my thesis, what they really mean is that they want to read the book that I'm writing. Because my thesis is, it's all about specific novels and that
academic
kind of
jargons.
thing. I mean, it's really not heavily... I really try quite hard to be clear. And that was one piece of feedback that I had in my Viva, was that every sentence was readable. Actually, one of my examiners said one sentence was difficult to pass. You should probably maybe take a clause out of that sentence before you submit. So technically there was a correction. that one correction. But yeah, that's barely even constitutes anything. But yeah, I try really hard to be clear. I think it's important. I don't respond very well to difficult writing. I don't think it's the point. I often work on difficult writing, I love Derrida. Most people can't stand reading Derrida. But there's a reason that writing is kind of ambling and complex and whatever. So there needs to be a reason. For me, functionally, I want people to understand what I'm saying. So I write in a way that I hope maintains the kind of scholarly rigor whilst also being easy to understand.
Which I think, when I think about your suddenly being thrust into the role of like a public intellectual in the wake of your viral fame online, you seem to have embraced this role on social media as sort of like an educator at large. And I think you've used Twitter and other social media in quite creative ways, like, for example, crowdsourcing people's opinions with smell loss of your posts. Like, has your sense of smell ever changed subtly or dramatically? You're working on a project about smell dysfunction and we'd love to hear your experiences. It's like you've turned the platform into a classroom. Do you see that as an extension to your teaching? Or do you see that as just your newfound kind of social responsibility to...
Yeah, I mean, I kind of know, because, there was a Rolling Stone article written about me. I'm not mentioning this to big myself up, but
they
because...
called you a beloved figure of curiosity, right?
Yeah. But the title of that article was something like, Twitter had a lot to say about this person's thesis, and now she's turning it into her classroom, something like that. And some people didn't really like that title very much, and I think that's probably because it comes across as a little bit patronising. And so I wouldn't ever refer to myself as Twitter's teacher or whatever. I don't really think of myself as a teacher in the online space. I would much rather think of it as having conversations with people, being an interlocutor with other people who can bring their own experiences, because we're not in a classroom, we're not in a supervision room, we haven't entered that kind of formal dynamic of student and teacher, and so without that I just feel that I just want to be a person talking to other people, and yeah, sure, I can share some of my expertise about this particular thing, but I'm really interested in what other people think and their experiences, and I don't think that my knowing a lot about smell undermines that in any way.
On the internet, some people seem to try and paint a caricature of you.
Oh gosh.
Of being vegan.
Oh. That's true.
Queer, feminist,
Also
and then
true.
in early 2025, I think you openly came out to be bi.
Yeah.
In the
For
context
the second
again,
time in my life. It was weird having to do that again. Yeah.
So I guess in the context of giving you a legacy-worthy interview, tell me more about the coming out process and what you felt and how you felt and why you did it for the second time or the first time, whatever you feel was important.
Yeah, I mean, it was never something that I hid. That pride flag was in my bio from the beginning of the account, and I think I came out the first time when I was 15, I guess, to not much interest from anyone. It all went quite smoothly. I think there were a couple of people who were a bit confused. Besides that, everyone just accepted it and moved on. So it was never a big deal to me. I never felt any way about it. I just knew it was who I was. And I was lucky enough to grow up in an environment where I never questioned anything about it, actually. It was just a thing that was true of me. And I think it wasn't really a formal thing, to be honest. Even when I came out the first time, I would just kind of bring it up every now and again if I had a conversation with someone about, crushes or whatever. Celebrity crushes usually was the thing. They would say that they fancied Robert Pattinson, and I'd say I fancy Alexandra Daddario. So yeah, I remember I used to have a lock screen of Alexandra Daddario on my phone, and someone was like, "Is that your sister?" I was like, no, but thank you, because I think that's a compliment. Yeah. So, this time, I don't know. I saw a lot of people speculating about it, asking, why is that pride flag in your bio? And I just thought, well, let's just let them know. I want people to get to know me. I have some reservations about how much I want to share online, but I'm working through that, and yeah, it's not a big deal to me. I have been openly out for a long time, and it's not something that
Do you feel like that
bothers me.
helped a lot of other people in the community to not only get to know you, but to gain more comfort in who they are as well?
Yeah, I hope so. I think it's important to, when you have a public profile and you have a lot of eyes on you,
There is a sense of duty.
Yeah, to some extent. I think not for everyone, but for someone like me who is very, very confident in my own sexuality, and I have absolutely no qualms about it whatsoever speaking about it. I've never felt any type of way about it. It's important to be that representation for people, to know that, we exist. The bisexual female academics, they exist. And, at the moment also, there are certain parts of the queer community, well, all of the queer community really, but in particular there are certain parts of the queer community who are under particular strain, are under attack, and I want them to feel safe in my little corner of the internet. I want them to know that they are safe with me, that I will never judge them, I will always be open to hearing from them, because they are, just another person. And it's brave, actually, sometimes, depending on your own personal context, to be openly out as whatever you are that is against the norm. And so, yeah, I want those people to know that they're in community with me, and that I value them.
Thank you for sharing. You value them, but also lots of people value you, including the book signings that you have recently had with your publishers. For those people who are interested in, I guess, the behind the scenes of a academic and the behind the scenes of writing a book, would you mind sharing to the extent that you can about what it's like to go through this process of turning a work into something in Waterstones or whatever?
Yeah, sure. So obviously I haven't done any book signings yet, because the book hasn't officially been written, but I've done a lot of other kind of events, like public lectures and that kind of thing, where I've got to meet people, which is the best thing ever. But so I've learned so much about the publishing industry, and I'm very happy to talk about this with anyone who's interested. I think there are probably not that many people who are like massively interested in the ins and outs of the publishing industry, but I feel very, very, very lucky to have had a lot of interest in the book that I wrote. I haven't written a book. The book proposal that I wrote, which was essentially the introduction to the book plus some other bits and bobs. And the book has been picked up in currently the UK, the States and Canada, I should say the UK and Commonwealth, which is an incredibly outdated term, but it's the term that is still used. The UK and Commonwealth, Germany, funnily enough. Thanks to my publisher in Germany. And yeah, the States and Canada. All, apart from Germany, all by Penguin, different subsections of Penguin. And essentially, the book that I'm writing is a hopefully very engaging and fun reintroduction of your sense of smell. So it's all about the power and the pleasures and the politics of smell. So it's kind of, like I was saying earlier, the kind of different sides of the coin. I'm going to bring some of that work about the politics of smell into it in ways that I hope will be really interesting with any luck. But also I will spend some time thinking through what smell can do for us and what it means to be able to smell in a positive way. So it will draw on pop culture and like kind of key literary texts that people might have read before, and lots of psychological studies and smell science and work in the humanities. It's a big interdisciplinary, really fun reintroduction of smell.
So logistically then, how did it actually work? Did they reach out to you? Did you have to negotiate, the writing, the proposal, the publishing, the salary, the commission model, the cost structure? Like, how does it work behind the scenes of the business side of?
So the way that it worked for me is that I was incredibly lucky to have multiple literary agents reach out to me, and I had meetings with all of those different literary agents and chose to sign with Janklow and Nesbitt, which is a literary agency that works across the UK and the States. So within that agency, I could have an American literary agent and a British literary agent. I spoke to the British literary agent on the call. Her name's Emma Leong, and she is one of my favourite people in the whole world. She understands me. We click so incredibly well. And so then we worked together on the book proposal, and I mean basically I wrote, she edited, made suggestions about...
For one of the quickest book proposals ever.
Yes, yeah, yeah. Emma said that it was probably the fastest that she'd ever seen anyone turn around a book proposal and get it submitted.
How big is the book proposal?
It really depends. It really depends author to author. It can be anywhere between like 6,000 to 7,000 words and 35,000 words.
Oh wow, so it's like a dissertation.
It can be really long, especially if you already have written the book.
Yeah.
You can kind of submit little bits or whatever.
Did you use AI at all during
No, I would never.
So just handwrite?
Yeah. I would never.
Every word?
I trust my ability to express myself better than any AI software ever could.
Wow. So you don't really use AI in your
I don't
work?
ever use AI, no.
You've never even tried it?
I've tried ChatGPT maybe twice. I've kind of asked it a couple of questions and been so appalled by its responses that I've just not bothered again.
Wow.
The thing is, it's not there as a tool for a rigorous academic right now. Like it can do things. It can do things. It's amazingly sophisticated for what it is, and how quickly it's developed. And I think that's very impressive. I don't think it has a place at the moment in academic writing. And
in your chats with the publishers, that hasn't really become a point of discussion?
Not for me. I think because they know my stance on it. I know it is a problem. It is a problem in the publishing industry that people are using AI to write their books. But I think it's quite clear that I value my own integrity and that they can expect that my work will be my work.
And it's very distinct to what an AI is able to do at this stage.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it's, AI works on gathering information, and there's just not enough information on the thing that I'm working on, especially not easily available on the internet, for it to be able to come up with anything particularly relevant. It just hallucinates a bunch of different things that don't exist, basically. You can say, like, are there any recent smell publications? And it will come up with something that just simply doesn't exist. So that's not of any use to me.
I see. So I guess we're coming to the final segment of this very comprehensive and holistic interview. But in terms of your book, we're obviously eagerly awaiting for 2027. But what's your 30-second minute elevator pitch for why we should get the book that hasn't yet been written, but it will be very good?
I'm sure I'll be able to do a much better job of this in 6 months' time or something. I mean, I am 40,000 words into the first draft, so wow. I'm trucking along with it.
That would only take ChatGPT 5 seconds.
And it wouldn't be the same material. we can be sure of that. I'm also not a salesperson. I don't want people to buy my book because I want money from them. I hope that for anyone who is already interested in the work that I do, that the book will offer them a fully fleshed out and entertaining. That's my kind of job, is to make this content that can be a little heavy. Some of the work that I do is heavy, and it's difficult to sit with and difficult to hold because I'm constantly talking about discrimination and hate, and to make it digestible and to make the people who experience this kind of thing feel heard. and feel seen, because I think people do tend to gravitate towards me who have experienced this kind of olfactory discrimination before, where it feels obvious to them. Maybe they've never put it into words before, but they were the kid in school who had a lunchbox that smelled differently to other people's, or they were the kid who would bring friends home and the friends would remark on the smell of their house, you know. So I'm really trying to write a book that is applicable for everyone. You know, there will be something there for everyone to connect with, regardless of what age you are, what gender you are, what, you know, all of these identity categories. What unites us is that we have a nose, that we have a sense of smell, or maybe we don't, and those people will be represented too, you know. I want it to be for everyone. I want the anosmics to feel seen, and I want the people who have always been sensitive to smell to feel seen, and I want the people who feel like, actually, my sense of smell isn't that great, to feel seen. I want there to be something for everyone, and I want to offer a kind of cultural commentary on these stories, what I call olfactories. There you go, there's a pun. A cultural commentary on these olfactories that helps people see themselves, because, you know, smell is part of us, it's part of ourselves, in a new way, to help them understand themselves better, and to understand that the way that they engage with other people and the world better. So that's my aim. I want to add value. I hope that people will find value in it. And I will do my very, very best to live up to the expectations that people have of me.
I love that. And for your future then, I would imagine that you envision yourself as an author, maybe as an academic, or how do you see your career panning out at this stage?
Yeah, I would love to do both. I would love to continue in academia, and I would love to continue being a trade author. So the academic job market is a bit of a mess right now, but I'm really committed to doing a postdoc, because I am really invested in this project about smell disorders that I am working on. And the other thing is that I really I value stability. And if academia, like a macadamia nut. If academia can't offer that, then I wouldn't feel terribly bad about continuing to write, continuing to inject that kind of scholarly aspect into those books, and to continue to research. There are ways of doing that without an academic affiliation. But for now, I will try and live in both worlds, to straddle both things.
In the context of giving you a legacy-worthy interview, you know, a piece of recording that captures a snapshot of where you are now and that you can look back on in 30, 40, 50 years' time and gift it to other people alongside your books.
Let's hope so. Fingers crossed.
We've touched on a lot of different things. I've got a couple to wrap up, but is there anything else that you feel like is important for you personally that we perhaps haven't touched on, or you really want to keep in this recording? Or else I'll wrap up with a round of questions.
I'm always so bad at answering this kind of question, where it's like, it's up to you. Do you want to say anything? And I'm just like, Okay, I've had a little think. And you know what I would say? Because I have repeatedly mentioned that everything online feels unreal for a little while, what I would say is that what does feel incredibly real to me is all of the messages that I receive from people sharing their stories with me, whether that be students who are telling me about where they are in their academic journey, or people telling me about how they've been thinking about smell in their workplace all of a sudden, and it will be from so many different professions. It will be paramedics thinking about the sociology of smell when they enter a house where someone has, collapsed and wet themselves or something like that. Smell is everywhere all the time. It's part of us. And so everyone brings their own stories to the table when we're talking about it. And so I find that really special. I really, really appreciate everyone who takes the time to send me a message on Instagram or to tweet at me or to ask me a question. It's so sad to me that I don't have enough time to respond to every single one. But I do my best to.
So what is your methodology of choosing, again, which ones to respond to, and in particular, how did our conversation even became a reality out of all the thousands of messages that you receive?
Well, I think one thing is if someone's asking me a question, then I feel that I have an obligation to respond to that question. If someone is sending like a short little comment, then maybe that won't make it through the net every time. It depends. It really depends on the kind of tenor of the message, I suppose. And I chose to respond to your message because I loved the idea of the podcast. I thought that it was very clear from the way that you framed it that you're very invested in the people that you bring on the podcast. You really take the time to engage with their history, to do your research in a way that I think is uncommon. And yeah, as I said on the phone the other day, I felt very charmed. And I think you have lived up to that despite the fact that you were skeptical. Yeah, I think that's how I really try to respond to as many people as I possibly can.
So has this conversation been what you expected when you first got the message, or even this morning when we first met for Xi'an Chinese food?
Yeah, I think so. I think we covered all the bases, really. This is definitely the longest interview I've done, for sure, which is nice. It's nice to really kind of get in there and to start to feel comfortable. I think my voice has probably gotten louder over the course of the interview, so you might have to bring me down a little in editing. I get excited and then I start speaking much louder than ordinarily I would. But yeah, I've had a lot of fun. Thank you so much.
I'm so grateful, but you're not off the hooks just yet.
Okay.
So
we're doing a lightning round.
Usually, yes, we're doing, as you know from the podcast episodes you've listened to, we're doing a lightning round and then 2 final to wrap up. First one, what bike do you cycle with? No, I'm kidding.
All I know is that it's from the Netherlands. I couldn't tell you any more.
Okay. So, first one is, what's on your phone cover at the moment?
My lock screen, it is maple.
Maple.
I think it will be maple for a long time. Might be a different picture of maple, but it's maple.
Your most used social media before and after the viral tweet?
Oh my gosh, I didn't really use social media, I must say. I would say that I spent the most time on TikTok, but I didn't post videos. I just absorbed other people's content. And I've tried really hard to curate a feed that doesn't show me nonsense like people having nose jobs or whatever. The kind of stuff that they tend to give like a 27-year-old female. Yeah, it's mostly like countryside views and sheep and stuff.
What time do you usually wake up?
It really depends. Ordinarily, I would say between 8 and 9.
What time do you go to bed usually?
Also really depends, usually between 10:30 and midnight.
Except for that week.
Except for that week.
Favorite drink?
Matcha.
Your favorite perfume?
Billie Eilish's first fragrance, which smells like cocoa powder, raspberries and vanilla.
Your most followed artist?
My most followed artist, as in like the artist that has the most followers, or
The artist that you followed the most?
oh, I see. Hayley Williams or Taylor Swift.
And the song that you have played the most through your streaming platform?
Ever?
What's that song?
As in like
Oh, ever.
the song I've
Yeah.
my god.
So I thought the song was called Ever.
Maybe, yeah. What is that?
I was going to get you to sing it.
Oh my gosh, what I actually don't know what it would be like of all time.
Or top few.
But it might be Simmer by Hayley Williams.
Do you want to sing a bit?
No.
Which country?
I wouldn't do it justice, that's why.
Which country would you most like to visit?
That's such a good question. The thing is, I had one, and then I did it. So now I have to find a new one. Oh no! I can't think. I feel like there's a lot riding on this answer, because whichever country I say, there will be a group of people go, woohoo!
50,000.
Well, maybe not
In
that
a
many,
room.
but there will be. If I say the Philippines, they'll be like, Philippines mentioned. Let's go with the Philippines. Why not?
Excellent. I just played the Philippines on an international basketball tour in Macau, China.
Amazing.
So extra love for
And
them.
did you win?
They won.
Okay. Well, woohoo, Philippines!
If you were able to suddenly learn a few different languages, what would they be in?
A few. Okay. I would. So I learnt German growing up, and I've lost it through not using it. So I would love to learn German again and become conversational again.
Yeah.
I would love to learn Japanese because I love the sound of Japanese. I find it very relaxing. And I also love the sound of Italian. I've learnt some Italian. I could do basic things like order things in a shop or whatever. So yeah, those three.
This is a bit unfair as in rapid fire, but let's see whether that is fair or good. What's your hottest take or contrarian opinion?
Oh my gosh, I must have so many actually, because I'm a really weird individual. Again, it's so hard off the top of my head. No. I don't think. Okay, this is related to something that I've experienced recently. I don't think sport should take more than 3 hours. So I think cricket takes way too long. That is my personal opinion. I can't get on board with cricket because it lasts all day. I personally want to have a kind of fully engaged experience, and I can't be attentive to something for more than 3 hours.
Because I'm thinking, like, if you're trained to catch Smarties, you would make a good basketball player too.
Maybe.
Which is less than 3 hours usually.
Trained to catch Smarties in my mouth. I'm not sure that.
Oh, in your mouth?
Yeah, that was the point.
Oh.
You could throw it up in the air and then,
Wow. I wish I had some Smarties now.
I don't know whether
We
I'm
could
still
get a live
skilled. I
demonstration.
might be. I don't know. Maybe it's like riding a bike. It's something that you never forget how to do.
Final two. First one is your rapid fire. Sorry, not your rapid. It's, I told you I made mistakes.
Okay.
Is your bed made at the moment?
Yes.
And finally, what would be the title of your autobiography if you were ever to write one?
Oh, crumbs. Learning to live.
Or Living to Learn?
Ooh! Nice.
Which
nice.
one? Or both?
Learning to live or living to learn?
Excellent. Second to last question then, somewhat building on that previous hot take question, but we are entering this rapidly evolving world. Geopolitical risks, AI, changes in our understandings of smell, pushed forward by pioneering social scientists such as Louks.
I don't think that's one of the key problems on people's minds at the moment, actually.
But what are your predictions for the future that if we were to listen to this together in 30, 40, 50 years' time with the next generation, we can verify and check whether you are an thinker with foresight?
You know what? I really strongly believe that, even though AI is undoubtedly going to become more advanced and is going to be integrated into so many aspects of life, my prediction for the future is that people will still resonate heavily with real, actual art produced by an individual human from their own brain with their own hands. I don't think that AI will ever be able to accomplish the kind of power that kind of art can.
Wow. And final question, the typical final one, as you know from listening to other episodes, but what's one message, quote, or saying that you wish every educator, leader, every Steve figures can promote, and that every child like you who may not always have fitted in, may have sometimes struggled with identity, with complexities, with difficulties of life, would be able to internalize and resonate with, that would help their life? Your closing remarks.
It's going to be really simple, and it is the kind of key theme maybe of some of what we've spoken about, but it's to learn to listen to yourself. Because I think people know in their bones what is meaningful to them. They will gravitate towards it, provided they open themselves up to listening to themselves.
Wow. So simple, but having now read more of your work and having had this conversation, that advice to listen to yourself is anything but simple. It's deeply difficult for many people with the demands of life.
And for me, I'm still learning how to do it.
And I think the few things that really stand out as I was sending out this invitation to invite you as a special guest on the podcast, and while I was preparing and while I'm, having this conversation with you today, both for lunch and for the episode, is I think firstly, the way that you're able to think so critically about reality and the social norms and the structures that exist, and thereby your positionality within this world. I think the second thing that stands out is just how kind and thoughtful and considerate that you have been, from our messages, from our calls, from choosing to offer to pay the bills for lunch, to choosing the right place and getting to
give you your cookies.
Oh yeah, thank you.
Just reminded me.
I think it's really special for someone to have so-called made it in terms of the virality and fame, but to not lose sense of the little things that make humans human, and to not feel, I don't get a sense that you feel like you're superior to anybody because that you have a big following, but rather you see it in the context of what it is, of the fictional online world versus the importance to still be human. And I think the final thing is just how like open you are, that you don't have all the answers, and that you are still learning, and that you are still experiencing. And I think that kind of humility, not just intellectually but on a personal scale, is what really does humanize you. And I think those traits combined, in my view, would make you a fantastic educator and a fantastic person in whatever domain that you choose to devote your many gifts in. So I wish you all the best. And
thank you so much. Thank you for having me. This has been such a pleasure, a real, genuine pleasure.
Thank you, Ali.
Thank you.